Welcome back to another episode of Everything Aviation Podcast. Today's guest I know quite well. He was former chairman of the National Microlight Association of Ireland for 10 years, former president of the National Aeroclub of Ireland, the club chief instructor of the Irish Parachute Club, fixed wing and flex wing pilot, and a winner of the Paul Tissander diploma. Ladies and gentlemen, this person has put up with me for nearly 26 years of my life. It is my very own dad. Dad, how are we?
How are you, Mikey?
I have to ask, or as I should say, to everyone who's listening at home, you're not known as Dad. It's Paul, but it's Dad to me. Where has your interest in aviation come from?
Well, you see, I thought you were going to ask that, because that's the most horrible question, and I'll tell you why. It's a horrible question because it just leads to a big string of cliches, and I don't really like cliches. Oh yes, I once saw a swallow in the sky and thought I'd love to be a swallow. And there's all that sort of stuff goes on, and that's not me. I'm just fascinated by aviation. The first recollection I have is we used to have a mobile home down Courtown in Wexford, and I remember, and always seemed to be on the way home and not on the way down, but I'd be sitting in the front seat of my dad's car, always wondering as we're driving along the road, I'd look ahead and think, wouldn't it be great if you could just pull the steering wheel back a little bit, just float on up, imagine the views. That's probably my earliest recollection. I was always into it, but I was always put off it. And that's a bit of advice that I give to people. Don't be put off it because of what somebody tells you. No one will tell you the good things. Everyone will tell you, oh, this is going to cost you so much. This is going to be hard work. You'll have to go to university. You'll have to do this. No, you don't. If you got a dream, follow your dream. So I eventually actually got into aviation by doing a sponsored parachute jump in 1988.
Oh wow! Okay, so that's a different side of aviation to what most people would be used to.
Yeah, but for me it was free because it was a sponsored parachute jump.
Okay.
And that was really why I went down that route, because everyone else told me, oh no, you need loads of money, and you need to do this, you need to do that. I never had any money. I moved to England in 1984. I was there till 93, and I was in a little flat on my own, and it was just the whole. It wasn't cost prohibitive. It was the thought of it being cost prohibitive because of what everybody was telling me. So I thought, well, I can still fly if I go and do this parachute jump. But I remember doing the parachute jump and sitting in this little Cessna 206. There was no door. I remember sitting in it, and I was so terrified that to this day, first of all, I thought, well, I'm sitting in the plane. If by some miracle I ever survived this, it's never happening again. I'm just not going to do it again. But I got so terrified that I don't know if you'd call it a mental block or whatever. But to this day, I remember being in that aeroplane, and I remember the parachute being open. They were the old round parachutes at the time. I remember the parachute being open, and that was all lovely. I've no recollection of ever getting out of that aeroplane. None. Except I have seen a photograph.
Wow. But like, let's stick to the parachuting for a moment, because you've gone on to be a tandem master, a tandem instructor. You've gone on to be club chief instructor and a coach, and you are you were the Parachute Association of Ireland training officer as well. So how does someone who's terrified and doesn't even remember getting out of the airplane go from being terrified and not remember getting out of the airplane to doing all that?
For the same reason I did everything else in my life. Pure stupidity. Absolute stupidity, and well, I suppose some people call it perseverance, but for perseverance seeks stupidity. I got such a buzz from it, and they were the old parachutes, and it was in August of 1988. I was 22 years old, and I remember we were jumping from Goodwood, and in Goodwood was a busy airfield, so we weren't allowed to land on the airfield. So the club had some deal with a farmer for 100 meter square on his land out in Lavender, Havant, anywhere somewhere near Goodwood. We used to get a minibus back. We'd land on this square, and there was rape fields and stuff all over the place. The place was stunning. It was fabulous. And on the round parachutes, it's so quiet, and I'm talking deathly quiet. but you get these smells. There's just no sounds, and you get different smells at different levels. And the whole thing was a rush. It was a big rush. One, I wanted a little bit more of that, but I wanted to try and avoid the whole fear factor that was never going to happen. But the main thing was, I wasn't going to be beaten. And I have this thing in my life that I'm not going to be beaten. And I don't do it in a bullish manner. I'm not going to be beaten. I'll just keep getting up. I'm not stupid. If I need to stay lying down, I'll stay lying down. You know what I mean? I won't get into a battle. I'll have a good, careful consideration of a battle before I take it on. I want to know I have some chance of winning it. But with this, I didn't want my memories of my lifetime dream of going flying to end with where, one, all I could remember was fear, and two, I couldn't even remember the parachute jump. To this day, I still don't remember getting out of the airplane. And I wasn't going to leave it there. So I had to force myself. And it was. And the whole fear and the worry is completely irrational. Because up to the time I'd done about maybe 30, 40 jumps, I'd be terrified on a Wednesday, waiting for Saturday to come along. I used to drive down from London down to Goodwood. And then it'd come to Friday. Friday, I'd be doing a little rain dance around the flat and praying that the weather was bad so I didn't have to do it. But I was never, ever going to say, no, I'm not going. But I would have liked some divine intervention in the form of rain or high winds, which that particular summer just didn't happen. It was a fabulous summer. And then by Saturday morning, I'd actually feel physically sick. And then I'd go off and I'd do another jump. And then I would come out absolutely buzzing again, ready for the next one until the following Wednesday came along. And it was a pattern and a follow. Now it does go away, but it was a pattern and I followed that pattern. But what I did learn, which was a great thing, it stood me greatly for everything else in my life, is I learned the hard way, and I'll tell you how the hard way was in a minute. But I learned the hard way to separate fear and panic. People don't do that. People say, I'm shitting myself. No, you're panicking. And they're two completely different things. And when you utilize fear, it becomes your best friend. Because think about it, you don't get complacent when you're fearful of something. In fact, it's on your mind, so you're thinking about it. So if I'm afraid of maybe say having a parachute malfunction, my malfunction drills are first and foremost in my head. And I also developed through this fear, I developed the thing was that not what would I do if this happened, but what am I going to do when this happens? So for every single jump, when the parachute opened, what a surprise. That was fantastic. And a nice, pleasant surprise, because I was expecting it not to open. Not in a bad way, but expecting it not to open so that I was always sharp in being able to deal with what would happen in the aftermath. And that stood me good step. Panic is a fight or flight type of thing. It's get me somewhere safe. You cannot think when you panic. So to be able to, most people can't distinguish between the two, but to be able to separate the two, it was quite a difficult thing to do and took a lot of time and took a lot of hard work. And you're fighting with your brain because your brain's telling you, no, this isn't right. So you're fighting with it. It's a bit like breaking a habit. But to be able to do that stood me great step for everything else I've done in me. And it meant that I could be terrified of something and still be quite good at it. That's where we ended up. There's a bit of a story to that, but that's where we ended up.
And it's true as well. I find it with flying and stuff like that as well. Is that if you have that bit of fear there afterwards, like you said, you get this buzz and a rush afterwards.
Yeah, because see, it's a pressure cooker effect. Let's just go back to skydiving for a minute. When I take tandem passengers, the first thing you're told is a tandem passenger is going to do every single thing in their power to kill you. That's what they are. The tandem passenger was your assassin. They are going to do everything because there's no news that they are. They're out to get you. The only thing they haven't done, from the assassin's part of the job, is they haven't stalked you for a few weeks first to find out all about you. But that's the only difference. But they are, because you have to be able to put anything they do wrong. You have to be able to put it right. And of course they're going to do things wrong. because this is completely alien to them. You're taking up to 13, 14,000 feet, you fail out of an airplane, and it's not a natural thing. But this is what I used to tell them. This isn't about tandems, it's about the effect, the adrenaline effect that you're talking about. We're animals, and by being animals, we have this instinct for self-preservation. Self-preservation is what we want. We'll do anything. Even if there's a shark chasing us, we'll slash children and throw them behind us, you know, to save ourselves. Self-preservation is where we're at. And when the door of an airplane opens, every nerve and every sinew in your body is saying words I can't say on this because it's public, but it says, don't do this. Everything is saying, don't do this. And you go and do it anyway. And you carry that fear and you carry that pressure. Even after the parachute opens, you still have it, because once the parachute opens, we have no option for a go round. So we have to, what's the word? We have to establish what the conditions are like, all in a short period of time. We have to establish our descent rate. We have to establish our forward speed, and because we only have one option or one chance of getting back to where we want to be at any given time. So that meant that we have to be in a certain place, but that's a whole other thing. But you're carrying all this pressure with you all the time. Now, for the likes of a tandem passenger, or in the early days when you jump on, when you touch the ground and you're safe, then it's wow, because all of a sudden this pressure and this fear releases. Safe, I'm here, I'm safe. As you go further on into parachuting, say going into a very tight display jump, I've done quite a few very tight display jumps. One of the tightest was into the American Ambassador's residence in 2012. There's high trees all around it. There's a mini White House up one end. So you have to get in. It's when you make that final turn and you know you're in. That's it. Happy days. Bang. Did it. Up to then, it's all pressure. But I didn't enjoy the pressure beforehand. A bit like waiting to go into the doctors. But I always enjoyed the pressure when I say with me motorbike road racing, and I'm road racing the bike on tight, narrow lanes at over 100 miles an hour. You don't enjoy waiting to do it, but you really enjoy doing it. And what I realized is that if you do come to a point where, because I think it's a bit arrogant to say, "Yeah, man, it's very close to death today. I defied death." There's a certain arrogance established. I won't say that. It's when your own perception is that you were at that stage where you were close to death, where anything could have happened. When you sit back and think about it, you think, I think I was a bit of a fool there doing that. You're still going to do it again. The reason you go and do it again is because at that particular point, that's the most alive you'll ever feel in your life. Being an inch away from death is the most alive you will ever feel. And I suppose it takes a certain type of individual to keep wanting more of that. But the pressure in the build-up is never nice.
Yeah.
But the pressure while you're doing it, yeah, live with that. And you live with that because you know in a race, I'm maybe 15, 20 minutes away from finishing and saying, yeah. And on the parachute jump, I'm 2.5 minutes. So the pressure while you're doing it, you're waiting for the end result, and that end result is it's like blowing the top off the lid off a pressure cooker.
It's like Will Smith. I don't know if you've ever heard of Will Smith talking about his tandem that he did, and he was saying that he was losing sleep the night before, and he kept waking up. And he's like, "Oh no, do we have to do this?" And he's hoping everyone was messing. And he gets down to the lobby of the hotel the next morning, and everyone's there. And he's all right, they weren't messing, we're going to have to do it. So he goes and he does it the whole way up. He's absolutely crapping and bricking it. And he said that as you get to the door, you're looking out and there's just this massive drop. And he said, as you just step out the door, he said, the point of maximum danger is just bliss. He said, the fear's gone. He said, what can you do? You can't get back in the airplane, so you're out and just enjoy it.
Well, you see, when you talk to people, and I was the same, and when I became an instructor, I started asking people, what are you afraid of? You afraid the parachute going to open? And they'd say, no. You afraid the plane's going to crash? No. So what are you afraid of? And people can't answer that question. They don't know. Yeah. They're just afraid. They don't actually know what they're afraid of. But it was brilliant. But you do get used to it. You do get used to it. There's an old saying, knowledge dispels fear. And it's a fact. The more you understand about something, the less fearful of it you are. So you do get to a stage, and quite quickly as well, where you realise that this is safe. It's a safe sport. And when you get to that point, then you start to spread your wings a bit to try and find the adrenaline again. I became a cameraman, free fall cameraman. And I did that to give me something else to worry about. In other words, when I was in free fall, I wasn't worried in free fall anymore. In fact, I really, really enjoyed free fall. So now I had to put myself under pressure in another way. So somebody was paying me to take pictures. So I had to be able to fly my body to the extent that I could take the pictures that they wanted. I had to be in the right place at the right time in free fall. So that led to another quite big challenge. And then you just go from there. The reason I became an instructor was because some people, and there was loads of them, because I was jealous of them for years in skydiving, but they're in all walks of life, where people just seem to breeze through. Now, obviously, I'm not saying they did breeze through. Nobody knows what goes on inside someone else's head, but they appeared to breeze through. That was my perception of it. And they didn't have much failure. I was a failure. I was the biggest failure known to the skydiving community. I was. Huge failure. Dummy ripcord pulls. You were supposed to do 3 and then you were ready for free fall. I did 75 and they gave me my own dummy ripcord. You know.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. 75 of them. And all the people that I did my first jump course with, they were all out doing 4-ways and display jumps. Yes, come on, we all go to France. Anyway, because I wasn't going on these trips because I was a student jumper. And then I ended up getting banned from free fall for life. McLaughlin was the CCI, the Flying Tigers at the time. And there was Ken, I can't think of his surname. He was we had 3 instructors who were ex-British military, really, really nice. He put me out, and what I'd done was instead of maintaining a good stable arch body position, I tumbled, and I tumbled for about maybe 8 seconds, maybe 9 seconds. Ended up pulling the ripcord while I was on my back. The pilot tube come up between my legs, and the set of lines wrapped around my leg, and the parachute decided it wasn't going to open, it was going to stream. So then I was in a predicament because I couldn't put the main parachute away, which is what would be normal procedure because I still had an attachment to my leg. So I had to get it off my leg first and then cut it away and then get the reserve out. And then I crashed into the side of a chalky hill around about 500 feet. I thought that ground looks close at 500 feet, but I didn't realize it was top of the hill. And that day, and it was devastating for me. And it was devastating for me because of what it had taken for me to keep doing it after the first one. It wasn't easy. But at the same time, I didn't appreciate at the time the instructors, and in particular the chief instructors, his mentality or his what he saw that look, something's going to happen to this first one. I didn't appreciate he was trying to protect me from myself. Mm. But on that particular day, I went back out to Ken. Oh, what is he saying? And I went back out to Ken. And he says to me, arch for me. And I threw my shoulders back and I thought it looked like the coolest thing ever. And he said, no, now arch for me. And he put his hands on my shoulders and he says, because not only did I arch, I'd start falling backwards, as a lot of people do. And he says to me, look, that's not an arch. When he stood in front of his hand on my shoulders, he said, now push your hips forward. Do nothing else, just push your hips forward. And all of a sudden I fell forward. There you go. And from that day on, I was still allowed, and very luckily I was still allowed to jump on a static line because I never had a problem on a static line. And it was at that point, that very point, where I learned to distinguish between fear and panic. Because what I was doing was panicking, and that was going to kill me. But carrying the fear with me was going to keep me safe, and I only started to realize that. So I started practicing this arch, and I went back and I did another few static lines. And then I went into the CCI one day, just sitting there, and I said to him, I want to go free fall. And he said, all right, when? I said, what? Now I didn't want to go anymore. You know what I mean? I said, what? He said, when do you want to go? I said, I wasn't expecting that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He said, look, it's quite simple. We've seen what you're doing. What you're doing is good. We'll give you another go. We'll give you another go. Free fall go this afternoon. And that was a horrible thing. I just wanted to go home, but anyway, because I thought, oh, geez, what's going to happen now? Because it was my first time going free fall since the incident with the reserve and the streamer and all. So I said, I'll go this afternoon. Because if it didn't, I wasn't going to.
Yeah.
I went home for a week. I wasn't coming back, right? So I went and I did a 5-second delay, and it was absolutely, the jump masters are running. It was timed at 4.9 seconds or something. I was looking back in the airplane at everybody, the airplane flying away, and it just went really, really well. And I never looked back after that. But at that stage, I'd done 100 odd jumps.
That's mad, because growing up in the Irish Parachute Club now with yourself and everything, seeing people with 100 odd jumps, they're looking at getting into teams and stuff like that, and you've only just gone free fall.
Yeah, but to go back to what I was saying, these other people were flying by, and I was jealous of them. They were finding it easy. And then when I decided to become an instructor, what I actually discovered was all of my so-called perceived failures were actually lessons. Because I actually made it to being a fairly good instructor, but because I could draw on those experiences and I could fully understand what these people were thinking and what was going through their mind, because it went through mine. If they had a problem, say a stability problem or whatever it was, I could understand that because I'd been there and done that. And that's what I found a lot of instructors who were probably fantastic skydivers, but if they didn't have the issues, they didn't necessarily understand the issues, or didn't understand a simple way to deal with them or to help the students. So I did find that all of those things that happened really stood me in good stead. Everything bad that's ever happened to me in life has turned out to be very, very good. Yeah. Everything. It's amazing.
And just touching, because you said something interesting. You said the tandem passengers are basically an assassin, and you're told.
Yeah.
So what does training for a tandem master look like?
500 jumps minimum to start with. A recommendation from a club chief instructor, and then you go into a tandem course where the first hour and a half we were watching videos of fatalities. Actual fatalities. Now, obviously, we didn't see the very end bit, and then we had to analyze what had caused these and how we might avoid them. And once we'd done that, it then consisted of 10 jumps, and those 10 jumps, the first one was solo on your own with the gear, which meant you stay up there for about a week and a half, the size of that thing on your own. You know, that part of you. But we did one on your own so that you could get used to the drogue. And then there was 9 then with passengers. Those passengers are experienced skydivers. They're briefed, and they are briefed to become the assassins. So the tandem examiner will pull them aside and he'll brief them to absolutely completely get it wrong, to tuck up in a ball or to stick a leg out or to try and roll it over, or just to prevent, just to put me in a position that I can't recover from. In which case, because if they were capable of doing that, there's no way I was getting on to the next stage. There was no way you're ever going to be a tandem master. But if they were able to do that, because they're experienced skydivers, they're also able to, once because I'm trying to arch over or whatever I'm trying to do, and they'll be doing the same, and the whole thing will come back. So the risk was still there, but the risk was minimal with those skydivers. And then after the 10 jumps, if I can't put right what they put wrong, I'm not going to be a tandem master. Neither is anybody else. But after those 10 jumps, then you're signed off to take out your first live passengers, because they'll panic. They'll roll up in a ball. They'll stick a leg out. They'll stick an arm out. They'll try and grab at your hands, which is not a very good thing. Suddenly grab your hands, especially if you might just need it to save their life in a couple of minutes. So you have all that going on, and it's just really interesting.
And I remember you saying, well, this is touching on two of the points you said actually, about having no recollection of yourself jumping out of the airplane. I remember when me and you did a skydive, and apparently you said I kicked for a good 1,000 feet, and I have no recollection of that at all. So that proves two of your points there as well about that kind of separating fear from panic.
Yeah,
but
so
like
you see, you've got to teach people to develop an awareness for their whole body, because we don't have an awareness for our whole body. When you think of it, when you rely on your whole body, because in skydiving, when you want to adjust your position or you want to do something, it's done by air deflection. So your arms and your legs and your chest and your body's your control surface. So you have to be aware of what everything's doing. But under normal circumstances, we're not, because that's there. It's the center of your universe. And you don't often think beyond that. Everything else is automatic. You walk, you move your legs, but the center of your universe is there. And when you're under that sort of pressure and that sort of panic, last place you're going to think is where your big toe happens to be at any given time. You know what I mean? So you do have to develop this awareness. And video actually turned into a fantastic training tool for doing that, for showing people. But it's great. It's great fun.
Yeah, definitely seems it. But I remember you saying to me as well. You're saying like you're not aware of what your body's doing. And I remember in the kitchen one day you got me to try and think about walking, and I couldn't walk because I was thinking about it.
No, you won't. And do you know when else that happens? If you're on your own walking down the street, there's a packed bus stop on the other side of the road. As you're walking by the bus stop, you can't do it because you just know. You know everyone's standing there for 10 minutes and they've had nothing to look at except you walking by. Try it one day. Your walk starts getting a bit funny. You start to get very, very conscious across the street. You don't. And in anything in life that where you require all of your body to act maybe as a control surface, so you need it in order to achieve something. You've got to be aware of where every part of your body is and what it's doing.
And then once all this, you've done your tandem rating and all that, at what point did you start looking at getting chief instructor rated?
Oh, it's chief instructor rated before I did tandem rating.
All right, okay, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I was jump master rated in 1988, I think. 2000 I did my instructor rating. I think I did my senior instructor rating in 2002, maybe 2003. 2004 I was the senior instructor. And then I was senior instructor in 2002, I think. Chief instructor in 2004. The chief instructor rated, but that didn't make me the chief instructor. I eventually got the position of chief instructor in 2010, August 2010. The vacancy come up and it was offered to me, which was an absolute privilege because it's the oldest sport parachute club in the world. And there had only been a handful of chief instructors ever in its history. So to me, it was a seriously prestigious post.
Yeah.
So I was well happy with it. Loved it.
Brilliant. So
I still wanted to fly, you see. I still wanted to fly because this is where we're still answering your initial question.
Well, this is what I was coming back to. Like, how do you? Because I know what you're going to say here. Where you wanted to fly, but surely flying your body is the most raw form of flying you can get. So how did you now start to look at powered flight?
Because I wanted to stay up there a little bit longer.
Okay.
I wanted to be able to go. I wanted to adventure. I wanted to be able to go. I wanted to fly. Although I was flying my body, and it is probably the purest form of flight, and I was flying a parachute, and with all the skills that are inherent in that, I wasn't flying. I wanted to fly an airplane. I wanted to fly. It was just that I still wanted to pull the steering wheel back in my dad's car going down the road. And skydiving just, it was brilliant, but I wasn't flying. So I still wanted to fly. Now I ended up getting I got a Microlight. I was down in Sywell at this. I didn't meet this chap. He had it advertised. 1999, I think it was. Yeah, 99. And it just happened to be in Sidewell. That's where I met Paul Dewhurst first. Absolute gentleman. Turned into great buddies on the circuit, on the European, because I was Irish delegate on the European Microlight Federation. And I met Paul, and I bought this little XL trike, and somebody had told me Jerry Snodden could teach me to fly, so I trailered it off up to Newton Ards, up to Jerry Snodden, and I learned to fly in that. And I got my wings. In Stormont, they had a Maynard Sinclair Pavilion. They used to give you little gold wings. They had a wings night. You got a little bit of dinner and all that. It was just good fun. It was great. But I actually got to fly, and I got to fly where I could afford it. And I wasn't waiting for an airplane for 3 months down in some 4-mile long runway club thing. It was grassroots, and it was fun, and it was adventurous at that time. It was just before the big boom where where we went to 450 kilos from 390 or whatever happened to be. I think it was 390. Went to 450 and allowed the 912 to come in, and that kind of didn't get rid of the adventure, but you had to go further to get one.
Yeah,
we could go to Laois with our little 2-strokes and our little lunchbox with the sandwiches. And we could take off and we could fly to Tullamore. And this is a whole day out. Could even be an overnighter for the weekend. And we go from where Lime Tree is now in Laois to Tullamore, because someone would have a barbecue on, and there'd be 3 or 4 of us. And that was, don't know how many miles it would be, but you'd do it in about 45 minutes in the car or thereabouts. It wouldn't be an hour anyway, right? About 45 minutes in the car. And we'd spend the day at it. And we buzz about, and sometimes you mightn't make it. Sometimes something would happen, and you have to land out in the field and give someone a ring to come and get you in a trailer. But you only went that far, and I'd liken it a little bit to the couple of days myself and Lisa spent on a boat on the Shannon, where there was a fella, a lock keeper, and he'd open up the lock for them. Thank you very much, on the boat, feeling like Captain Paul. And then we go down to the next lock. And the same lock keeper be waiting for us. And I'd say, how did he get here before us? But the fact of the matter was, when we looked at our route over 2 days, we could have covered the whole lot in 2 hours in the car. But you know what I mean? And,
yeah.
But the world just moves at a different pace. And it was like that with the Microlight.
Yeah.
It was great fun. It was adventurous. First time across the Irish Sea, wow, was that adventurous. Landed on Eddie Redmond's place in Kilmuckridge in Wexford, and we put on a big rubber suit and we ran Shannon and we filed a flight plan, and next thing we were taking off and we were heading across the sea, and that was pure adventure. And then a friend of mine said to me years later, he said, do you want to go to Popham? I said, yeah, I'd love to go to Popham. Right, he says, now, because we planned, we were going to Eddie Redmond's, we'd have the maps out and the pencils. We weren't doing much with them, but we'd have the maps out and the pencils, and we were proper adventurers. We may as well be climbing Everest. And we planned for weeks. And then he rang me and he says, do you want to go to Popham? He's a Sky Ranger. He says, do you want to go to Popham? And I said, yeah. And the planning consisted of, I'll meet you at 4 o'clock in Clonmel. And I hopped in the Sky Ranger. And halfway across the sea, I was opening these maps and he's trying to get me out of the way, he's giving me He says, what are you doing? I said, I'm folding the map. He said, why are you folding the map? I said, because I can. You couldn't do that on the flex wing. You had to cut your map into little bits and put it on a keyboard.
I have to laugh here now, because the only time I ever actually look at a folded map nowadays is when I have to in a competition. Otherwise, it's all on my phone on Skydive these days.
Yeah, but what I found was the adventure was gone in the sense that it was far too civilized. Oh, we had a heater, and then the next thing we were gone, we landed in Haverford West Cafe was closed. It was late afternoon, and we were heading on the top. So he says, right, come on, we'll keep going. I was starving, right? It's tea time now, 5:30 or something in Haverford West. And as we're heading over the Welsh Mountains, he pulls out a big flask of tea and some rolls. He said, do you want a cup of tea? That was alien to me. I'm going, oh yes, look, there's the world down by there. Fantastic. So it was very civilized, and in a little way, because I'm into motorbikes all my life and I don't own a car and all this sort of stuff. It was the difference between a motorbike and a car. It was remarkably civilized. Fly there and back. We got up Sunday morning, we took off and we flew home. Whereas if that was in the flexions, right, on the sea, we get 20 miles, we have to put down in a field, pick a good one, you know. There was all this. It was not bravado. There was this testosterone style manliness that went with it. We'll go and fly our flex wing. But it was great, and I still love the flex wings. I did the conversion right from a Carol onto the 3-axis, and I loved the 3-axis. And I still do love the 3-axis. But I still have a burning desire for flex wing.
Yeah, but
it's not about the car.
You were saying like you upgraded the flex wing before that, though, didn't you? Like to the 912. Did that take any adventure away from it, or was that just the same, just with bigger and more powerful power plant?
No, it didn't take any adventure away. This is what I was saying to you earlier. Rather than take the adventure away, you had to travel further to get the adventure. No, but the 912 would get to Tullamore quicker than the car would, which was, there's no adventure in that.
But it's been in the air. I thought every time you'd be in the air is an adventure. That's the way I look at it anyway.
Yes and no. Yes and no. It'd be like you getting into your car and driving over a mountain off road would be an adventure, and then driving home along the motorway would still be part of it, but wouldn't quite be the adventure. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, the adventure was still there. So then we needed a bigger adventure. So then we ended up going to Scotland. Then we ended up in France. We didn't even know where we were going. There's a good friend of mine, God rest him, he's gone now, Mike the van. And it's something in Spain. He rang me one day, and I had the 912 Raven. And he rang me and he said, "Have you got a few days off?" I said, "Yeah, I have a few days off." Right, he says, "Load it up." And I'm coming up. He flew up from Kerry. I'm coming up. So I got the Saturday. We had no idea where we were going. We were just going somewhere. So on Saturday morning, then he turns up Friday night. Saturday morning, pulled it out. It was blowing a gale. It was blustery. It was horrible. I remember. I said to him, "Where we go?" So come on, we go to Newtonards. Now nothing was flying in Newtonards. Helicopters weren't even flying in Newtonards. We got to. Well, we flew through the valley there at Newry, the Mourne Mountains. And we were getting battered to the point I just wanted to be out of this thing. And I was close to tears. I was genuinely close to tears. And we put it down in Newtonards. I said, "I'm going no further," and we put them in the hangars. And we woke up the next morning. It was just as bad. Poor old Mike says, "Where are we going?" I said, "We're not going anywhere." He said, "We're back." And I said, "I've got a tailwind. I'm going home." And he says, No, you're not going home." He says, "We're going somewhere." He says, "Ring your mate in Yorkshire." And I rang John Moore. And John Moore said, and now I found out about poor old John years later, that John would have told me he had 4 mile an hour winds, no matter what was going on. Winds about 4 miles an hour. And it was blowing a gale. So he says, I rang him, and he says, yeah. And he had his own strip. So Mike says, "Right, we're going to Yorkshire." So we flew to Carlisle first, trying to think of the name of the strip. I hate when names go on my head. Just out of Carlisle. Flew over there along the Scottish coast, and it was fantastic. We got across the sea. That was our adventure. And then we took off from, the name will come back to me. But we took off from there.
Was it Kirkbride?
Kirkbride, that's it. We took off. We met. We no fuel. We need fuel, right? And at the time, there was a hotel thing up in the car park. You could taxi into the car park, just park. And there was a hotel, and there was a tenner for a 3-course meal.
Oh,
but
wow.
Normally when I'm flying, I don't eat much. It doesn't appeal to me. I just don't feel hungry. But then when I finish in the evening, I'm starving. So we got this meal, and we got back in, and we took off, and it was one of the best flights I've ever had. We were climbing a constant 250 feet up over the Pennines. And like you're aware of the Curragh, what the Curragh's like with the sheep and the grass. It was just open
Yeah.
land, and we just followed the road, and we ended up in Barnard Castle, where we went out for a few pints now. So then now it's adventure.
Testing your eyesight, were you?
Oh, it's game on. And then the following day, the Monday, I see we ultimately at this stage wanted to end up in Spamfield on the Friday. So on Monday we woke up and says to Mike, John Moore says just this, he says, it's about 11 o'clock, because we didn't do early, About 11 o'clock, he says, if you're going somewhere, you better be going, So we said, right, where we go? Mike, as usual, got the map out, and he says, why don't we go to London? I said, geez, London sounds great, right? We'll go to London. I says, I know a fella in London Colony, so we'll have somewhere to put down. So he says, right, we'll go there. So we flew down, we got down as far as Melton Mowbray. And I think Mike Arenda needed fuel or something. So we're flying around. We looked at this old disused airfield, and it was all concrete, but the concrete looked like it was broken into lumps. We didn't want to put down on it. And then Enda come on the radio and he said, listen, I must have seen a strip which went off, a grass strip went off at 90 degrees to this runway, not far from it. I almost touched it. He said, right, we'll put down there. So we put down there. We were on our way to Sywell at this stage, and we weren't that far from Sywell. But anyway, we put down there, and when we put down there, as soon as we shut down the engines, we see this Jeep coming across, and I thought, oh, here we go. We're in a spot of bother now. But it was a really nice farmer, and he owned the strip, and we had a good old chat with him. We didn't have PPR around, we just needed to put down. And he brought us out in the Jeep, and we bought sandwiches, and we got fuel, and it was fantastic. And then we flew on to Sywell. And the European Championship, it was the night, I think it was the night that David Beckham missed that penalty in Portugal for England.
Oh, yeah, put it right over the bar.
Yeah, the one that still hasn't landed yet. But I wanted to watch the match, but no one else. Mike and Enda, they weren't interested in football. So we marched on. We had a lovely flight down into London Colony. And we landed there, and as we landed there, the place was deserted. But there was an instructor that was after packing up, he had a flex wing on it thing, and he drove in. He'd seen us come into land, so we drove in. So he drove us down the pub, and we had a few scoops, and we hopped in our tent. And the whole thing was, once we were camping at that stage, the whole thing was, wake up in the morning, look out. If the weather's good enough, we'll go flying. If it's not, we'll pull the thing down and go back to sleep. So we woke up anyway Tuesday morning. And Mike says, right, where are we going? And he was just annoying me at this stage. You know what I mean? I didn't have my cup of tea yet. I didn't have my cup of tea, me smoke. I love me cup of tea, me smoke. So I don't know where we're going. And then I says to him, he said, we gotta go somewhere. And I says, right, tell you what, let's fly the Raven back to the factory in Medway. Because I've always wanted to do that. So we did, and we had a nice early morning flight down over Epping. I think it was over Epping Forest. We arrived down on the banana strip, which was quite daunting because on the right-hand side as we approached, there was just these massive cables, and you can hear them buzzing in your headset. And you think you're closer to them than you actually are, but they're very daunting. They're big power station cables. So anyway, we landed in there, and just having a cup of tea, talking to the instructors, had a look around. Chris Draper gave me a little look around the factory. And I said, yeah, this is great. And then I come back in, get me a cup of tea, and there's Mike. Where are we going, lads? I says, I don't know, Mike. I'm happy I got this far, do you know what I mean? And he says, and he opened up his map again, and he says, it's not that far to France. I said, you what? He says, not that far to France. I said, right, we're going to France. So we had to go to Headcorn first. Anyway, we got bollocked over in Headcorn when we landed there for not following proper procedures or something. And by the chief instructor there at the time. Because there was a helicopter, right? Now, I'm not saying I was in the right or the wrong or making any excuses. This is a fact. This is what happened. But as I came into land, I called in and I had mistaken another field from a distance for the runway. So I had been cleared to set up on a left base. But the left base I'd set up on was for the wrong runway. It wasn't even a runway, it was just a field. So I was actually approaching more or less down the middle of the runway, and kind of in an overhead join position. So I radio back in. There was also, we heard nothing on the radio. There was a helicopter hovering along the runway. We were watching them for a while. So I called in and I said, look, there's traffic on the runway. I said, I'm after getting this wrong. I said, do you now want us? I said, I'm in an overhead join position. Do you now want us to go around or vacate until the traffic's cleared? And I got quite an irate person on the radio. Just landed plane. So I said, right, I'll just land it. So I did. But the runway is real long and head on. So I was able, this helicopter was hovering down the other end. I was able to go way over the top of him and drop down. Landed long, thought need fuel, pulled up by the fuel pump. And when I pulled up by the fuel pump, it was quite amusing, but I'm not belittling and making fun of anybody. While I was at the fuel pump, the helicopter comes in and he lands on a little stand. And the helicopter pilot kept looking at me. And I thought, geez, maybe I'm in his way. You know, he wants fuel or something. It could be in his way. But he kept looking at me. Then he gets out of the helicopter. And he was a proper helicopter pilot. He had a beigey, yellowy coloured tie, and I had little helicopters on. So
that's how you know you've made it in life.
I think he had a couple of helicopters on his shirt as well, right? And I don't know whether he was an instructor, but anyway, he was just looking at me. That's all. He was just.
Yeah.
And the next thing, Mike comes out. He says, "Are you finished there?" I said, "Yeah. Why do you want fuel?" He said, "No, we're being called into the tower. The chief instructor wants a word." And I said, "Oh, yeah, fair enough." So off we went, and I can't remember his name. It was a really, really nice chap. But we got called in, and I had to nudge Enda because Enda might be a little bit fiery, do you know what I mean? And I knew from the way the helicopter pilot was looking at us, we were getting bollocked over something. I wasn't sure what yet. So I had to nudge Enda and say, "Listen, you put your head down. Sorry, that's the only words you need to know. Sorry. Put your head down, terrible sorry. We're really sorry." So anyway, and I said, "Don't try and explain yourself either." Right. So when he had the three of us lined up, and he went through us, must have been for about 10 minutes. And we're the kind of people who give Microlights a bad name. Just us. No one else ever gave Microlights a bad name. Just us. And look, there was a whole load of, I won't call them mistakes. They weren't mistakes, but there was the procedure wasn't followed. Some of it down to inexperience. That's not an excuse, because sometimes if you don't follow procedure, it can end up with dramatic consequences. So I won't make little of it, but we were getting bollocked. And I could see Enda with his hands behind his back, and his knuckles were getting white. I'm not just say sorry. And then after that, when he'd finished bollocking us, he just said, "Right, lads, do you need flight plans? Do you need this?" Could not have been more helpful. File the flight plans for us and all that to go to France. So 3:30 that afternoon, off we went to France, and we landed in the 2K. And I had a bit of a bird strike on the top of my wing. You want to hear the clatter of it? It was a swallow or something over Bologna. And I was thrilled with myself. I'd now flown the Microlight far enough that there was terracotta roof tiles, and I had to put my watch forward an hour. You know?
And get your passport stamped.
Oh yeah, proper hero I was. But I didn't know where Mike was gone. Mike and Enda were gone. I didn't see them across it. See, I didn't realize how close France was, because it was a lovely sunny day, but it was hazy. So when we were crossing the English Channel to Cap Grenade, we couldn't see the other side because it was hazy. It wasn't foggy, it was hazy. We could see ships, and we could. So all of a sudden, we arrived at France much earlier than I expected. But apparently, Mike couldn't find one of his gloves, so he landed. So we landed in the first field he found in France, and Enda landed in beside him. And I was gone on to the 2K to see could they find his gloves. They never did find it. He must have gone for a swim at some stage. But we ended up in the 2K. Oh, we thought we were great till we seen the price of a pint. Oh, unbelievable! What like I said, the cost of living there was phenomenal. But the people in the airport were brilliant. They said there's bad weather coming in. It started pissing rain. Absolutely lashing rain. about 45 minutes after we landed in the two. And they had these massive hangars, so we put the 3 flex wings in the corner of the hangar. And then they got us a hired car, which we should never let end the drive because he only has 2 speeds, stop and go. And it was a dinky little car. We only just squeezed in it, but they got us a hired car, and they also sorted us out the cheapest hotel.
That's
and that was Tuesday evening. But then the weather turned bad, and it was the time when hangars in England were being blown over with aircraft in them, actually turned over with aircraft. The weather just got absolutely horrendous for Wednesday and Thursday, and we're still in the 2K. Friday, I said, no way, I need to get to the Isle of Wight. And it was a lovely day, but it was still blowing nearly 20 miles an hour. And it was into our face back across the English Channel. So I said, where will we go? And we were after being talking to a fellow who flew Britain Norman Trylander.
Oh, wow.
That was his job. He'd go from Lid to the 2K every day, and he'd drop the passengers off and hang around, and he'd fly back again. That was his job. Real, very nice chap. And he said, go on into Lid rather than go all the way back to Headcorn. So we did. We flew back, went into Lid, got a bit of breakfast, and then we flew. It was a bit bumpy and it was a bit hot and choppy, and we flew all the way along the south coast of England. It was fantastic. And then we did a hop into Spanfield on the Isle of Wight on the Friday evening. But the weather it wasn't going to let up, you know. And I'm one of them people, Enda wanted to fly everywhere and Mike wanted to fly everywhere. Once I got there, that was me. I was going to be a social animal. I'd fly when I was going home again. But we went to go home then on Sunday, and the weather was horrendous. So we went in the tower to see what was going to happen. It was a little bit cloudy. It wasn't too bad. There was a few showers, but it was blowing a gale. And the flex wing turned over at the end of the runway and Sandown lining up. So I just looked at Mike. I said, I'm going nowhere. And then he said, come on, I have to get home. I don't do get home. I find it's extremely risky, so I just don't do it. So I said, no, I'm staying. And he went off anyway. He got home. But myself and Mike stayed. So 4 o'clock, 4:15, Monday morning, we said, right, we'll go, because what we'll do is we'll go to Wing Farm, which was just up the other side of the New Forest. We'll get some fuel at Wing Farm, and then we'll go from we used to go Wing Farm. Then there was another little strip, I think it's closed now, just across at the Severn Bridge in Wales and Westport, or Newport. Used to land there, nice chap there to have fuel for us, and then we go from there to have the rest. But we were expecting about an hour to Wing Farm. Turns out we were 2.5 hours to Wing Farm. And it was smooth, it was nice, but we just weren't going any place. Just into a headwind. Then it was another more than 2 hours. It was starting to get choppy then by the time we got to Newport. And then by the time we got to Haverfordwest, Mike was behind me. And on the radio, he actually asked, I was landing, I think it was 2-2, I think the runway was. It was east-west, and we were landing into the west. But as I was landing, it was rough and it was choppy. I was probably getting lifted out of the seat a couple of times. And as I was lined up for the runway, Mike actually got on the radio and he said, are you landing on the grass or the tarmac? I said, I'm landing on the tarmac. He said, well, why do you keep skipping over to the grass every so often? And it was just rough.
Yeah. Now,
when you're looking at someone else, it always looks rougher than it feels, but it was rough. So we landed in there, and Mike wanted to carry on. I said, no, not doing it. I'm not going to fly across the Irish Sea. I rang my mate Henry in Wexford, and he said, no, it's blowing a gale there. I said, I'm not going into that headwind across the Irish Sea, because I'd be at least 2 hours over the sea. And I said, I'm not doing that. So we ended up, we got a lift. You got a lift or a taxi, can't remember, up to Fishguard. And we got the 2 o'clock in the morning ferry home to Wexford. And the weather cleared up then for the Sunday. So he got a lift back off a fella in a plane to Haverfordwest, filed the flight plans. I went on the ferry and had flight plans for 3:30 in the afternoon, and we flew home then. So the following Sunday. But I remember sitting there. Haverfordwest had a twin, King Air or something like that. One of them posh ones. It didn't have the blinds on the window. You turned the window and the window turned black. One of them ones. And they had and posh people used it for going fishing in Ireland and stuff, right? Because they'd pull up in their Mercedes or their big car or whatever, and then the pilot had run out, and the pilot would put the bags into the plane for them, and off they'd go. I mean, me and Mike were there, and we're looking disheveled. We've had 10 days on the go. We're looking terrible disheveled. We're in the tower, figuring everything out. We were heading off that day, right? And the pilot came in and he says, he only had all these papers here, everything, Aeroclub. And he went up to your man in the tower and he says, could we just have a weather report, please? We want to go across to Ireland. And your man says to him, I'll never forget it because it made me laugh. He says to him, oh, don't worry about a weather report. Just follow them 2 microlighters. They're going there. In which case, he just turned on his heels and he left. But I just found it very amusing at the time. But that wasn't the first big adventure. The first big adventure was in the little 2-stroke. Before I got to 912, we went to Open in Scotland. That was proper adventure. That was Open in Scotland, landed on Giga Island, and I thought once we landed on Giga Island, I thought that's it. I've no more sea crossings. But I actually did. Because the next 57 miles up to Oban was stunning countryside. There's nowhere you were going to put down. You were going to head for the city. Maybe only the shallow bit, you were going to head for the city. And then on the way back, the weather turned and we didn't make it to Giga Island. We were 2 hours, indicating 60 miles an hour. We were 2 hours, 57 minutes to do 57 miles. And we got near Giga Island, but we ended up having to put down on the side. We just couldn't see. It was a bit of rain. We were forced down to 600 feet over the sea. I never wanted to fly again, as it happens. And we put down on the side of the Mulla Kintyre, where we met a deer stalker. Now that's a whole different story. But we met a deer stalker with a very excitable dog and a load of rifles in the Jeep. But I remember Enda saying to him, it was a Sunday afternoon and it was lashing. We're stuck on the side of the Mulla Kintyre. I had my flex wing in a silage pit thing, the 3 walls, like a handball court for silage. I had mine in there. Enda was on top of the headland. And Enda says to him, he said, yeah, look, we have a spot about her. Mickey had an engine failure and crashed down by the sea, so we had to go and recover that. So it was not a big adventure, but just the funny bit, because I won't make a long story of this, was Enda says to him, he says, you must be the Microlighters. It's a little single track road. It's a tiny little road. In the middle of nowhere. It turns out we landed on a 20,000 acre farm owned by some English gentry, so there was no people there. And he looks at us and he says, me, Enda, and Mickey, and we were drowned. It was pissing them. And he says, Sunday afternoon about lunchtime, and he says, you must be the Microlighters. I said, yeah, we're the Microlighters. He says, there's one down there, he says. I said, yeah, that'll be mine. He says, there's one up there on the hill. Enda said, yeah, that'll be mine. And he looks Mickey up and down and he says, I knew something was amiss. And Enda said, look, Enda said, look, it's Sunday afternoon, we have to get home, we got to sort something out. Mickey's at the crashing. Keel of the trike broke. No injuries, but so we need to sort something out. He says, is there a pub? And your man says, John, I think it was John Petrie, his name was. Peter Petrie.
What a name.
Well, that name was Petrie, anyway, but he says, Enda says, is there a pub? He says, aye. There's a pub about 8 miles, and he nods down that way. And Enda said, but he said, it's not open yet. And this is the 22nd of September, right? Enda says, he says, it's not open yet. And Enda says, well, when does it open? He said, April. So in the end, we chatted him up a little bit, and he brought us to a place called Ardrishik, and we got fuel and we got a bit of soup, and he allowed us to stay. It turns out he was a deer stalker who worked for the farm, and the English like City of London type stockbrokers, businessmen and all that would pay 10 grand for a weekend so he could teach them how to sneak up on the deer, right? That's really what it was. So he was part of the farm. So he allowed us to sleep in his farm, or in his deer stalker's lodge that night, and it was still blowing a gale the next day, but it was blowing a gale in the right direction. So I went down and I couldn't. Enda says, I'll wait to see if you take off. He said, I'll wait up the top of the thing. And I was sitting in this little 462, got it started, and then a school bus came along. And I couldn't manage the wing on the ground. It was just too windy. And I'm thinking, well, I won't be able to do it on my own, just physically wouldn't be able to do it on my own. And the school bus stopped, and the driver gets out. And a few kids get out. He said, do you need a hand? And I said, well, look, I said, you got to be very careful of that propeller. I said, but if you wouldn't mind getting a couple to hang on to me wing wires while I'm on this thing up. And then when I say let go, let go. So that's what they did. There was kids holding on to me on the wing wires. And then I just said, let go. And they let go, and away I went. And you know, it wasn't really engine failure territory because it wasn't a cliff, but it was quite a steep, grassy drop down to the water of about 200 or 300 feet. So really, it was like an aircraft carrier takeoff straight off the end of this. And then the wind was that strong that you get this instant altitude, and we made it home that day. But that was very quite horrendous to get home in that evening. So we've always had this thing where we've never really got the weather, and that's where the 3 axis.
I'm seeing a trend, mainly because when we did the Round Britain Microlight Rally with the BBC, we had to leave the aircraft in Innsbruck in Liverpool.
Yeah, and this is what had happened. Now, look, a better man than myself would fly it home in some of these conditions, but I'm one of them people, if I didn't enjoy it, if I didn't find it pleasant, well then, if there was another alternative, I'd take that.
Yeah.
Because you can always go back and get it and finish your adventure.
Yeah. Well, I remember that day we were going up to Inns and we were getting 90-degree wing overs, and it just wasn't an enjoyable experience. And it was quite glad to know when them back wheels touched the ground in Inns that we were done flying.
Yeah, I wasn't. I think I'd have been happier. I'd have been happier just to do the one more flight to Belfast.
Yeah.
I'd have been happier maybe to leave it in Belfast, because then at a moment's notice you could just go and get it.
Yeah, because I remember the scramble we had trying to get like Ryanair flights out there, and then a taxi parked on my foot, and that's another story altogether.
You know, look, that's just how it goes.
Yeah. But talking about the Round Britain Rally, how did BBC get in contact with you to get us to go and do the Round Britain Rally for the Real Makeup Sim and their Flying Machines documentary?
Quite strange, and I found it strange and flattering in equal proportions. Somebody rang me and said, we're from Walker George Films in London, and we're looking for somebody to do the Round Britain Rally, and we're going to be making a documentary about it. We're going to be following 3 crews, and they gave me the thing. And they said, we've been going around England, because I got fairly well known on the circuit around England, Scotland, let's say around the UK. A lot of people knew me, and I'd done the Spanfield, and I'd done a bit of karaoke, just the usual crap that I'd get up to. And but people seem to remember me for some reason. But the girl said, look, we're after going around England, all the clubs and all, asking. They said, want somebody with personality. Said, your name kept coming up. So we said we want to do it, and then they said, would you mind if we came out and made a pilot? Would you remember the pilot that came out and made that? And then they did tell me afterwards that the BBC commissioned it on the strength of the pilot, and that they wanted us in it. But it was, that's what I'm saying, for somebody who's doing something like that, to get program commissioned by the BBC, to ring you up and say, we were putting your name around the UK, or we were putting this around the UK and your name kept coming up, was actually quite flattering, because it must have I must have a half decent name in the UK.
Yeah. Well, at this stage, you were chairman of the National Microlight Association and everything, I think, at that stage, and you were the Irish delegate on the European Microlight Federation as well, and also during all this.
Well, the chairman of all of that happened by accident as well. The European Microlight Federation didn't. That was something that I actually fought for, that we would get involved with. What I didn't like, and especially having been training officer of the Parachute Association of Ireland, where I had gone into Baldonnel military base on a Tuesday night and signed off jump masters and trained instructors and stuff. for the military, I knew the importance of training. I knew the importance of procedures. I knew the importance, even though I didn't quite get to write a head corn, but I did know all of the. I didn't know all that. I knew all that, and I thought it was extremely dangerous when I came across, when I started Microlight, and I came across all these people with no training. Most of them didn't know how to rig it around like that, and it was just, come on, we'll be all right, let's go and have a lash. And there had been a few crashes, and all I wanted was proper training. That we had to go to the UK to get a license, and I was running a thing at the time called Telefit, where it was in Clonbelow, where we brought microlights in, and fair play to the British microlighters. They flew over, we got 70 odd aircraft in from the UK, you know, and they'd all bring a teddy bear, and then we'd have a certificate with the registration of the plane that the teddy came in, and there's like a little teddy passport thing, and we raffled them off for Great Ormond, or not Great Ormond Street. That was when I was in for Temple Street Children's Hospital, and we done about $5 grand, I think, the first year. And I'd gone to the National Microlight, because I was keeping myself to myself. I'd gone to the National Microlight Association just to inform them about Telefit. And I came out as vice chairman. I wasn't even a member. I had to become a member to be the vice chairman, but I came out as vice chairman. Not because I knew anything, but just because I opened my mouth and nobody else did.
Yeah.
So I immediately thought that there's something not right here. So I got liaisons, into a bit of liaison with the BMAA, who everybody had respected, because all of our lads were, the ones who were trained, were flying on UK licenses. They had most of our aircraft were UK registered aircraft, and we had UK inspectors, and everything was UK. So I got in touch with Chris Finnegan at the time. Chris has been an absolute gentleman, and has turned into, just like Paul Dewhurst, an extremely good friend over the years. And he came over, we did a meeting, and we tried to build the association. I ended up chairman the following year. But the big problem was, they had said to me, do I want to go and meet the Aviation Authority? And I said, no. I do want to meet with them, but not now. Because I will not meet with anyone unless I can speak with the same level of vocabulary on a subject as they might have. So it was time to start learning the rules. So I had to start learning the rules. Now I do have a photographic memory, which stood me in great stead, because I used to amuse some of the lads at meetings, because I could quote from the books that they had on the other side of the table, with all the little tabs to show them the pages. So I could actually quote from those books. And we used to win the meetings. It was great. We never gained anything from it, other than we won the meeting. Because you know you've won a meeting. You see, my dad used to tell me, the person who's right will always win an argument. And I realized that's not true. The person who has the largest vocabulary on the subject will win the argument.
Yeah.
If you see two people arguing outside the pub, and eventually one of them takes a swing at the other one, the fellow who just took the swing has just lost the argument.
Yeah.
And he's only took the swing, he ran out of words, if you get what I'm saying. So I had to learn this, and I started quoting, we were winning, but you know you won because they bang the table and say, "We're the authority," and that's what we say. And you think, right, well, we won that. And I used to love it. I used to love to pit my wits against people who are on 100, 200 grand a year, whatever it was. And I've borrowed 20 quid from my bus fare to get there, to pit my wits against them across the table and win, regardless of whether there was any prize at the end, because we never were going to get a prize. And then in 2004, they brought out the AIC. So 11 of 2004, I think it was 11 of 2004. And effectively what it did was, we had no training in Ireland, but it outlawed the English license, or the British, the UK license. That was outlawed, and all our pilots were flying on. But now all of a sudden they couldn't fly on. And that needed to be addressed. So where do you go with insurance? Where do you go if somebody gets killed? So all that needed to be addressed. And at the time we had been notified that there was the European Microlight Federation starting up, Keith Nagel, and absolute gentleman, and I like to say he was a dear friend, a fabulous, fabulous man. He'd set up with French with a family called Dominic Marouz, and both of them, God rest them, have passed since. But Dominic and Keith are gone, and there was Rittica from Holland. They had set this up, not realizing it was going to get so big, but it got huge, absolutely huge. And the first meeting was in Paris in 2004. I went. There was me. Oh, yeah, first meeting. And the only other time I'd ever been to Europe, anywhere in Europe, was the time I'd flown which was only, I think, a few months earlier or whatever it was. It was when I was flown to the 2K in the Microlight with Mike. And we got to Paris, and it was a different level. And everybody knew everybody else's language, bar us, you know. Us and the English. Everybody else could speak a bit of French because they're all neighbours. And we went there, and we all done our piece and the difficulties we were getting, and we were going to get support from EMF, which we did, and we ended up members. We went to the 10-year anniversary in 2014 in Paris. We were 10 years on that. We made some very, very, very good friends from all over Europe on that, but we had to learn all the rules, and we learned all the rules to the point where, but the more we learned, the more the Aviation Authority wanted to dig their heels in. Because, and this is my opinion, but I don't think I'm too far from the truth. But for some reason, airworthiness seems to be quite practical all around the world. But when it comes to pilot licensing, there's a certain snobbery about it. You don't want young lads flying around in kites. They want Captain Knobhead from somewhere, you know, Captain Knobhead in his 16 engine and 5 gallons a turn of the prop aeroplane. And that's the type of thing everyone has to be a captain. So that snobbery exists, and still exists.
Oh yeah, I've experienced that so much with my own line of work and everything like that. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, but saying that, however ridiculous you might think it is in the UK, the perception from my side or from our side is that when you go to the UK, it's so aviation friendly.
Yeah.
And that's always, even on the Round Britain Rally, we were able to get mass transits and all sorts.
Oh yeah, I remember us passing straight over the top of, was it Bryce Norton was stuff for doing circuits underneath us, and in Ireland that would never happen.
Yeah, no, there's no way that would happen. No, because I usually even get people saying, like, I remember landing, it was on the road. We weren't far, or weren't long back from France, and I landed in Clonbelow, and I was walking by, and this fellow was doing a Cessna 172, I think it was, and quite a nice chap, and he says to me, "Are you going flying in your kite?" I says, and then all the lads knew what I was like. So all the lads in the party, you could see them all going, here we go. Right? I said to him, I asked his name, can't remember his name. And I says, I'm going up in my kite. I said, by the way, where did you come from? He says, I come from Sligo. And I said, and do you go far? Oh, sometimes we'll get out the water further. And then you mentioned a couple of places around Ireland. And I said, well, I tell you what, would you do me a favour? He says, yes, yes. I said, did you come back and talk to me all about me kite when you've been to France and back? He didn't say it on. He didn't say another word, and I just walked up. But he was a dead nice chap. There was nothing personal. But then, you know me, I don't take things personally. I never have done.
Yeah.
No, I'm one of the old school where you can still disagree with someone and still be friends. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
The enemies just because you disagree. But the Aviation Authority at the time, where they and up to still is the same. It's got a little bit better, and I suppose. I think
we'll touch on the Aviation Authority in a minute. Actually, more recent stuff after this, but carry on.
Yeah. No, if you want a culture change with anything, it requires a series of attitude changes. You've got to change opinion, and you've got not just a person's opinion. You've got to change mass opinion. And then once you've done that and you've changed the opinion to support your argument, then you can start to get a culture change. And that can take generations of time. I knew I wasn't liked in the aviation. I always felt liked and respected amongst airworthiness. Always. And I mean, great rapport with airworthiness. I never had an issue with airworthiness, but licensing didn't like it. And the individuals in licensing didn't like it. And the individuals above them also learned to dislike me as well, because in the end we had got extremely frustrated. We had a meeting in 2010, 16th of March, because it was the day before Paddy's Day. And we had a meeting, a European Microlight Federation meeting, where we had generic letters were sent by each individual club around Europe. Letters were being sent to the Minister for Transport to try and address the problems. That almost caused a diplomatic incident, so we were a little bit more disliked. It wasn't the case of being disliked, because I never did this for myself. And people never got that. I had my license, I had my insurance, I had my experience, my nose was clean. I was doing this for the people, for everybody else.
Yeah.
For the association, not for everybody else, that sounds a bit patronizing, but for the sport in general. And I was doing it on a voluntary basis, and everything I did was on a voluntary basis. But because I'd signed stuff as chairman, I was the one who was going to get targeted. And perhaps we both chairman as well, which is what happened. Well, you're always going to get targeted, because it was Paul McMahon, not the NMAI anymore, even though you were signing it on behalf of your members, because you were given a mandate from the members.
Yeah.
But I knew all that. And I also knew as well that the people that I was going to help, because this is what happens in life, that the people that you're going to help are the very people who are going to hang you out to dry somewhere down the line anyway. So all that was going to happen. And I knew it. I just didn't know to what extent, and I didn't know how it was going to happen. But I did. I was ready for it to come. So in 2010, anyway, after the meeting, we decided to put a demonstration outside Aviation House in Dawson Street. And we got all the posters done up, who regulates the regulator, institute, IAA Institute Against Aviation. We got all these sort of things. The Parachute Club had also been experiencing difficulties, so they decided to roll in. And when we had this demonstration, it ended up on the 6-1 news. So we thought no more about it. But a couple of years later, there was a chap. And I'm not going to mention any names or anything in this, because I just give you the facts. I'm not going into too much detail, but there was a chap down the Parachute Club, and he didn't like me, but he didn't like me for a different reason. He wanted me to sign him off as a chief instructor 3 times, and I turned him down 3 times because he just wasn't ready to be a chief instructor. Certainly not personally, he just wasn't ready. I'd signed many other people. And he seemed to take this personally. Well, he went out with the airplane one day against the warning from me, and then just made a calamity of errors the whole way down, ended up doing the downwind landing and breaking his ankle. He even then didn't follow procedure, because I sent an airplane up to see was he all right. He said, he's walking back in. So if he was injured, he should have spread his parachute out and made himself visible, and we'd have come and got him. Anyway, the upshot was this led to a delay. He had a broken ankle. He was walking on a broken ankle. This led to a delay in medical intervention and stuff like that. Just all the wrong signals. So we eventually got sorted out, but he blamed me. So he decided he'd write a nasty letter into the Aviation Authority saying that if I was to be left in charge, then people were going to die. And all was very dramatic. It's more dramatic than Coronation Street on a good day.
Like the Bourne films.
The Aviation Authority contacted me and said, well, look, can you come in and address this? So I said, yeah, and I did. So I went in to address it, and thought I gave a good account of myself. And it only dawned on me then afterwards, they said, no, we're not going to give you permission to be a chief instructor. So I ended up losing my job as chief instructor, which was my job. Yeah. With a private company, which I wasn't happy about it. No avenue appeal, and it was supposed to be a suspension, but it was indefinite. So I wasn't having it. So the upshot was, I said I'd seek to get a judicial review. So I got a legal team, sought leave for judicial review, was granted leave, and then coming up to the judicial review about 3-4 weeks beforehand, my solicitor abandoned me. And the way it works over here, if you lose your solicitor, you lose your barristers. This is about 3 weeks before this case is coming up. Now, I only found out from an email in a file there a couple of years ago, long after it was over, that she panicked because she'd never been in court or something. That was how it was. I had to go out and buy a suit. A very, very good friend of mine, who just happened to be the vice chairman at the time, Warwick. He gave me money to go and get a suit. So I bought a suit. And after that, I was on my own. So I went in against them, and they had the best of everyone. They had the best. Turns out their junior counsel turned out to be one of my lecturers in Trinity College in second year. I'll get to that in a minute. But over the course of the 3 days, and the place was packed, courtroom was packed. Parachutists, pilots, aviation authority, everybody was there. Newspapers were there, the whole lot. And I was oblivious to that because I had my back to them all the time. I'm looking up there. But over the 3 days anyway, I won the case. They didn't like the fact that I won my case because they had actually said they're going into disposal and blah, blah, blah. So after I'd won that case, then they published a report about me that had a whole load of lies in it about me. And these were things that had already been proven during the judicial review, and the court had accepted and they had accepted that they weren't factually sustainable. But they still decided to publish them and print them. They tried to say then I took another case against them for that, and I ended up another 2 cases against them. But I took a case for that where they came in and their defense was, well, look, hang on a minute. This report was published in April before the judicial review. But then I was able to point out that written in the report, it said we're waiting for a reserve judgment on the judicial review. So that couldn't have been April because the judicial review wasn't until June. So there was all this going on. Anyway, this went on for a few years. While I was doing it, I became very passionate about the English language and how powerful the English language is. And the English language became fleshy to me. It became something I could, like Lego, I could touch it and I could play with it and I could look at a letter and say, hang on a minute, there's a point in this letter. But if I leave that in, it allows the point to be distracted from and you're not going to get back to it. So I'll take that output. And it's brilliant, loved it. So I ran down to Trinity College in Dublin, which my mother, God rest her. So she would have laughed if she'd have seen me. Used to go by on the bus and she said, the only way you'll pass through there is go in through that gate over there and come out on the other gate. She said, Your Honour, you'd never manage in Trinity College. And I never had any school exams anyway. I left school at 15. So I went in and I said, look, how do I learn about law? I said, I'm representing myself in the High Court. I said, we'll come in and do an interview. So I went through all the proper application process, did an interview, and I got me place. And I did a full-time law degree in Trinity College. I graduated there in 2018. So I had that as well. Plus, I wanted it because I knew this was going to be ongoing, and I didn't want to be caught out anywhere. I needed to learn stuff. So it was helping me out at the time. So anyway, in 2016, my cases settled. So I ended up, I suppose you could say, I won all of them.
Brilliant.
Against them. And that's really where we are now. But you see, the thing is, I still always feel that I lost. And I will always feel that I lost. Because I had my 912 Tanner, I had to sell them. I didn't realize had I been able to hang on to it for another couple of months, the cases would have been over and I still would have it today. I really didn't want to sell that, but I had to sell it. And when it came to it, like their whole thing was to take me on, and to do that was to teach me a lesson and to get rid of me out of aviation. And effectively, it's a good few years now since I've jumped, and I do want to go back jumping. But I can't ever go back, or don't want to go back at the level, because the people who I thought were going to protect me, the Parachute Association of Ireland, which I was a member for 25 years, didn't want to know. they were more interested in trying to look good with the aviation authority, and they started feeding stuff about me that they should have never been telling. They were making up stories and all, feeding it back to the aviation authority to make themselves look good. Where I always thought, look, they're like a union. If I'm in trouble, they need to be protecting me, but they didn't. And the same with the parachute club. They wanted to carry on. They were worried about what the aviation authority might do to them. So they bottled as well. So I was left on my own. As I said at the start of this interview, everything bad that's ever happened to me in life has turned into something good. And I'm now sitting on an acre and on a lovely house in a shed, and I've just started up a motorcycle repair business. And so, you know, life's good. Life's always good. I'm a firm believer, if bad things happen to everybody, to teach you lessons. You can go one of two ways. You can play the victim, in which case you're going to become the victim at some point if you play the victim. And if you play the victim, you're only going to do it for attention anyway, which has a life expectancy. Or you can do something about it and see what comes out of it. Because even if I'd have lost the court cases, I still would have learned something. I wouldn't be where I am now, I'd be somewhere else, but I'd still be happy I'd learned something. They're all lessons. Whereas if you play the victim, I call it being nomadic, in terms of everything has a best before date. So you play the victim, but you come to me and say, my girlfriend left. I say, oh, jeez, Mikey, that's terrible. And gives your daddy a big hug and all that, you know what I mean? Right? I know what gives a big hug, then go and make me a cup of tea. Right.
This cements when I tell everyone that you're just a knob.
I know. Our own kids are just a knob. Well, I'm not necessarily, I'm not a cool person at all. I don't do cool things. I don't have cool things, and I don't do cool things. Like, as far as I'm concerned. But I mean, because nothing in life, this is what I learned, nothing in life is real. We're not even real. We're sitting there in an interview, we're not real. And I'll prove it to you, right? You put yourself in a room with 6 people and have a chat in the natter with them, and then leave the room and get them to discuss you. Each of those 6 people are going to discuss somebody different.
Yeah.
They're all going to discuss their perception of you. So nothing's real. You know, absolutely nothing in life is real. So if people want to perceive somebody as being cool or somebody as being not cool, then that's entirely up to them. But I certainly wouldn't consider myself cool. I've struggled quite a lot through life, but I've achieved a lot in life. But that was all through my own choice, because I remember my granny telling me years ago, I was only tiny. She said, look, I'll tell you what, only do things in life to make you happy. And when those things stop making you happy, go and find something that makes you happy and go and do that instead. And that's what I've done. I've achieved a lot. Like I'm a motorcycle road racer. And I love that.
The other thing I love about the thing that came out of the court case and everything was, as well, is that the initial complaint was about, like, you mentioned safety and everything like that, and yet you've been given a Paul Tissander diploma award from the FAI for your contribution to safety in aviation.
Well, yeah,
that's another thing that's come out.
That was a massive surprise. The chap from the Microlight Association had nominated me, and I was awarded that on the SS Rotterdam in Rotterdam in 2015. Now, I couldn't make it there. I was in college, so it ended up getting posted to me. But that's where it was to be awarded. And there's not many people in Ireland who've got one, as far as I'm aware. There's only a handful. And it's all in French, but it's for exceptional services to sport and general aviation. So, wow. Yeah, I'm actually very, very proud of what I've achieved.
Yeah.
I'm very, very proud. I know I worked very, very hard at it, but it wasn't like work, because it was always something, like my granny said, it was always something that made me happy, something that I enjoyed. So I always did it, but it was never worth money. But I'm not money orientated. I don't like money. It scares me. It's nice to have a bit, but it's not going to motivate me. I'd rather give than try to get. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I remember being sent on a business course by the Department of Social Protection, second business course, 2009, and I still see the tutor now, and she still doesn't get it. Really, really nice girl. She still doesn't get it. We were all sitting there. There's about 18 of us, And we're all sitting around the table the way you do, you know, like this, you're in primary school and you got a sticker and a pen, you had to write your own name and stick it on it in case you forgot. And anyway, she come in and she was going around, what do you want? Oh, I want a big business, I want to be a millionaire. Everyone wants to be a millionaire, right? I want to be a millionaire. And then she got to me and said, what do you want? I said, I want to keep my life. And she said, sorry. To this day, she doesn't get it. She said, sorry. I said, I want to keep my life. She said, what do you mean? I said, I got a great life. I've got time on my hands. At the moment, I said, I do bits and pieces here and there. I've a family that loves me. I like to go home. I said, at the time, we rented the house, but I said, I love my life. I want to keep my life. Oh, she said, you don't want millions? I said, I love millions. I love it, but I can't go and get it. And she says, why can't you get it? So I can't go and get it because then that will become my life. But when I keep the life I have, I don't. And then when I get it, I have to try and hang on to it or try and get some more. I said, that becomes my life. That's not the life yet. And to this day, she didn't get it. So I don't need money. I need enough money to pay my bills and do the things that I like to do. I don't need any more than that. And nobody really does. But money genuinely, I think mainly I do that out of fear of money. I am terrified of it. I don't know why I'm terrified of it, but I just don't. I'm not a big fan of money. Yeah. I'm not money oriented. So that led me to where I went that I could do stuff. I always did it on a voluntary basis. Do it on a voluntary basis. You're not doing it for free. You're doing it really at your own expense. Like for years, and eventually the Microlight Association paid for me hotel and my meals and stuff when I went to BMF. But initially, for the first 4 or 5 years, I was paying for all that myself. But it was great. We went to Venice and we went to Oslo, and I've seen people. I had dinner with the president of Krakow in the 16th century palace with a gold leaf invitation. If I tried to get in there now, I'd be shot. I didn't even know it was the president. I'm in there having me school. I was in the 16th century council chamber. There's an original 16th century staff with a big wooden pole that had a silver thing on the bottom. But you bang it twice to start a meeting since the 16th century, right? And I went to bang it. A woman comes, she grabbed my arm like that. She says, no. Start meetings, and she stopped me. Right? But then we went out and we're having a bit of meal. The meal was funny. It was like on breadboards that were standing up. They were standing up like that. And there's all these vegetables and fruit and all that was cooked, but they were actually making pictures. It was a shame to eat it. They were like paintings. It was fabulous, but this man came out in a suit, and we were having a laugh, a few dirty jokes, you know, a few beers, having a bit of crack with him. And it just a fella in a suit. And I went home all disappointed, and I thought, at least the president could have come out and seen us. We were in his palace, right? At least that was a fabulous place. So he could have come out to see us. So I'm having a great, nudging your man in the ribs, and I might you hear this one. And I'm a bit disappointed. But it was the time the Euros were on. And the Euros were on in Poland, right? So a few years ago. The Euros were on in Poland. So I got home and I was sitting watching the telly with Lisa. There was an England game on in Krakow. I'm sitting there watching the telly, and they had the president's box. Waiting on the president of Krakow. Right? I'm sitting, I know I'll get to see what he looks like, you know, because it's only a few weeks later. Now I'll get to see what he looks like. It was him. It was him. Out he came and he sat down, and I'm nudging Lisa now. She's no ribs there. It's him. That was him. That's who I had dinner with. Yeah, that's who I elbowed in the ribs to tell him another funny joke. Yeah. So I did actually meet the president of Krakow. We were in the Czech Republic and in what's the name of that place in the Czech Republic? Prague.
All right, okay.
We were in Prague, and they had the Department of Transport opened for us on Saturday and Sunday to have our meeting. And I was walking up with Joe Conrad from Germany, walking up these big marble sweeping staircases. I've been on Titanic or something. And we're walking up, and there's these fellas with guns down, and they had a little metal detector thing, right? And the others was coming in, and I started laughing. And Joe said to me, "What are you laughing at?" He said, "Joe, look round you. So we're in to check Department of Transport, open for us, nobody else. We're walking up a marble staircase, I said to him. Do you see them lads on the door? He says, yeah, yeah. I said, you try come back in here on Monday and see what happens. They shoot you. No, this is fantastic. We went to Lisbon and we did tours. We went to the furthest westerly point. I got to fly in a Quicksilver in Lisbon with this head case. Don't know who he was, right? He just turned up. He had a leather helmet and he had a big cigar, and the cigar was like a big telegraph pole. And he had this Quicksilver, no one to go with him, so I went with him. And we flew all along the cliffs there in Portugal. Had a great flight with him. And the faster we went, the bigger the car was on his cigar. And it was always, you know, I've had some absolutely stunning world-class experiences. I got reindeer in Oslo. No, if I hadn't have been doing what I was doing, I would have never got to do that.
So
we went on it. I'll give you a laugh, and I'll probably finish on this because I'm at the end. I don't really know what else to tell you, but
I've got one more point to touch on after this, but yeah, carry on.
Right, but I'll give you this anyway, right?
Right.
We went to it cost the French a fortune, right? It was the 10th anniversary in 2014 of the European Motor Federation. So we had a dicky bow, the whole shoot match, you know, tuxedo. Lisa was in a dress, blah, blah. And we got on this boat to do a cruise. It was a proper silver service waitress meal thing on a boat, cruise up and down the Seine. And have a look at the Eiffel Tower and the Notre Dame and all from the river. It's fantastic. And we're all sitting there. But I don't get the whole posh meal things, right? So my dinner, I ordered the duck with the pepper sauce, right? But we're at a table with, it was us, the Spanish, the Belgians, and the French, right? They don't normally find things funny. But we're sitting there, the plate was, I can't even show you on the screen, the plate was huge, big rectangular plate, right? If they had had normal sized plates, we'd have got at least another 2 people at the table, right, for starters. The food was gorgeous. But all your vegetables and stuff are in them. Everything's in the medallion, right? It's all in the medallion of vegetables and stuff. And then there was a bit of hedge up the top left-hand corner. I'm not sure what that was for. I wasn't eating it anyway, right? But mine arrived, and the duck was in the middle, and all the pepper sauce was splashed all over the plate, everywhere except on the duck, right? I'm having none of this. Now, with Lisa being a chef, this was obviously going to be a bit embarrassing for her. I said, well, look at my plate. I said, it's huge. There's a few bits on it. I said, and he said, I'm missing the duck with the pepper sauce. And she said, stop it. She said, just don't say another word. She said, that's presentation. I said, I want to eat it, not look at it. She says, no, that's presentation. So anyway, the fella come along, the waiter come along, he had the thing over his shoulder. He come along, he says, Monsieur, is everything okay? And I said, yeah, it's fine. It's very hard to get the French and the Belgians to laugh, right? I said, yeah, it's fine. I said, but I ordered the duck and Lisa's gone, oh, Jesus, no, right? And I said, I ordered the duck and the pepper sauce. Oh, oui. I said, would you tell the chef? He must have thought he was Zorro, right? Would you tell the chef he appears to have missed the duck with the pepper sauce? And then Lisa, your man's looking confused, and Lisa says to me, she says, you can't say that. I said, why not? I said, he did miss the duck with the pepper sauce. I said, you don't go down the ice cream van, down in the ice cream van, and you buy a 99, and the man says, you want chocolate sauce on that? And you say, yeah, and he sprays it all over the van. Yeah, he puts it on your ice cream. You don't have to dunk it. That way she went really red, and the French and the Belgians had a bit of a laugh. Food was fantastic, but we still had to stop at McDonald's. We got the bus to stop outside McDonald's in the Champs-Élysées on the way back. So we were a bit starved. In the tuxedo and the dress at McDonald's. There you go.
Oh, I know.
We've had some fabulous times. Life's been good, but I do need to get really back to where I was, because like I said, after the court cases, still kind of feel they won. Not monetary terms, but the money didn't mean that to me, other than it made us more comfortable. But they set out to do whatever they wanted to do as far as my flying was concerned, my skydive was concerned. And at the moment, because I'm not doing much of any really, at the moment I think they've achieved what they set out to do, or what I believe they set out. So there you go.
Well, out of everything that you've done and stuff, what has been your favorite?
Oh, that's tough. That's tough because I've had favorites at different times, and much along the same way I said, my granny said, do things that you really enjoy. When you stop enjoying them, doing something else. On that basis, there's been quite a few favorites. What would be favorite? I suppose the biggest achievement would be the legal stuff, because it took the most. Everybody knows what I did, but nobody knows what I had to go through in order to do it. And I'd heard the expression before myself, a roller coaster. You know, it's a real roller coaster of highs and lows. I didn't understand that until I started getting these things where it started getting complex and it started getting intense, and you could go to bed on a high after sending an email. You sent an email, and wake up the next morning, there's a replying email on your phone that absolutely slams you back down into the ground. You have to start again. So I say, in terms of achievement, it would have to be the legal stuff. And even I think it's a big achievement, although I considered it a bit of a laugh at the time, or a bit of escapism. Was going back to college for 4 years with all the young people and getting a law degree.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether that's ever going to be my favourite. Getting caught out in Scotland and landing on the side of the Mull of Kintyre, that was a massive achievement as well, because that's the day that I learned that I will break before this machine does.
Yeah.
It was rough, and it was also a time afterwards where I said I won't fly in that again, but I'd still make a step up to what I would fly in. So to me, that was an achievement. I think my favourite time was EMF, and I missed them. I do genuinely miss them. I made some very, very good friends all over Europe, and we had meetings and we had scraps, and we achieved things and we didn't achieve other things, but we're all friends. To meet those people, to see those places. So I think what started that was me going to tell the Microlight Association about Teddy Fields, and completely accidentally coming out as vice chairman. I wasn't even a member. I think that then, I suppose, would have to be my favourite, because that's what led to everything else.
Yeah.
I don't really have a favourite. I enjoy life. I enjoy what I do. Now I go with social media. I have great fun with it as well, because I just throw a whole load of crap up there, because people don't get it. It's not real. Social media, you don't think it's real, because that's all that's in your world, but it's not real. So you can just throw something up and just sit back with your bucket of popcorn and watch the fireworks fly and people killing each other. It's not real. Well, no, I just enjoy life. Life's good.
Yeah.
Life's always been good. I do forget I'm getting old. No, I do. I just forget it. Sometimes I remind myself and think, well, it's not long now till I'm 60.
Yeah.
You know, it's less than 5 years till I'm 60.
Yeah.
And I don't feel anything like it. You know, but life's good. I do know one thing. It's when I sit down and my time has come, and my pipe and my slippers and my big thing of Ovaltine or cocoa or whatever it is, I'm sitting there talking to the grandson, and no, son, no, I've got no regrets. And I won't have any regrets.
Yeah.
Because I've done everything I wanted to do. And it hasn't been materialistic. And if it hadn't been materialistic, well, then I wouldn't have the same outlook and attitude that I have now.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, it's like I'm sitting in my own bar here now with a pool table and a big screen and a dartboard. And so, but what I've been doing has never been materialistic. But what I have discovered is that if you stick by what you're doing and you enjoy what you're doing, material things will come, and they'll come when you least expect. So that's about me in a nutshell, really.
It's been really good, Dan. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on today, and it is great to finally get an insight into what goes on in that mind and head of yours after 26 years of not really knowing.
No, there's a lot more going on in there that I wouldn't inflict on you.
I do appreciate that.
Because normally on the phone and on the video calls, I wouldn't be anywhere near this long. But there you go.
Yeah,
I've tried to get away a few times, but you kept saying, "Oh no, one more point." There you go. No, it's been a pleasure, and it's great. It's great that I was able to do it. And it's I don't know whether it's not flattering. It's more humbling, I think. Because I've seen your other guests and the prestige and all that goes with your other guests, and it'll be interesting to see where you think I might fit in amongst all that, because I really don't see myself in anyone's league.
And it's quite funny. I've interviewed someone who's met the Queen, but you're the first person I've ever met who's met a head of state and tried to bash a staff that's only been bashed by that head of state since the 16th century.
The 16th century. That's probably happened. But I think there's a picture on Facebook of it. But look, I got to jump into the American ambassador's residence on Independence Day, where you meet government officials and all that. But
it's been great because I've got
because I do the things I enjoy doing and that I like doing, I don't get starstruck.
Yeah.
And because I don't get starstruck, you know, the way people would say, I used to say to you when you were a kid on my shoulders when you'd go to an Ireland football game. You'd say, "Oh, I want to get Shay Gibbons' autograph," and I'd say, "No, I want to get in a position where Shay Gibbons wants mine." You know what I mean? So I don't get starstruck like that. But now life's been good. I've met some amazing, wonderful people. I've visited some fantastic places, and I've got lifelong memories and lifelong friends. And there's be absolutely, no matter what happens in my life, there will be absolutely no regrets.
Yeah,
other than having this little out to enjoy.
Yeah, it's brilliant, and to have experience like a lot of the stuff you've spoken so passionately about, which is such as skydiving, flying, and everything along those lines. It's been really, really good from this point of view as well. So to hear you actually talk about it has been really good. But thank you so much for coming on, Dad. For listeners, anyone who's likes this or wants to hear previous episodes, please like, share, and give us a subscribe. And yeah, Dad, I'll talk to you soon.
Cheers, son. Chat to you later.
Bye bye.